Bergman. Here. Epley.
Here.
Gunther.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Simmons. Here.
We could all stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda, Mark?
A couple, Mayor. The runway extension update that Steve Schroeder was going to give on his study session, we're going to have to do it at a different time. Steve is ill, and we have a slightly amended fee proposal for the airport at the table. Those are the only two changes.
Thank you. The minutes from the January 17th meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion support, corrections, additions, anything? Anyone? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. No special order. Study session. Todd's going to talk to us about water sewer funding and the Clean Water Drinking State Revolving Fund.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Actually, Scott Hall's here with me today, and we're going to call up the presentation.
On the computer.
Yeah. You have a hard copy of it in front of you.
Yeah, a hard copy of it.
So we wanted to introduce you. I don't know how familiar the commission is with DWRF and Clean Water Revolving Funds. It's a low-interest loan program that's been out there for several years, and we haven't really looked at it, not wanting to go into debt to fund improvements. But here recently, with some of the funding, infrastructure money that's out there, we've seen a little bit more of a grant option becoming available through the program. And we wanted to bring it to you to take a look at, and it might be an opportune time to consider some of this funding for wastewater and drinking water improvements in the city. That you're really used to it.
Alright, yeah, as Todd mentioned, just kind of want to give you guys a high-level overview of what the program is about and what are the steps that would be necessary to apply for funding through the program. And as Todd mentioned, it's all through the State Revolving Fund, which is headed by EGLE, it's kind of the Environmental Regulations Department for the state. And they get money from EPA, federal government, and disperse that money. There's the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which is for wastewater projects primarily, and then the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for drinking water projects. Two separate programs, separate funding applications, but same governing body and funding mechanism there. Again, as Todd mentioned, they're routing a lot of that, the bipartisan infrastructure grant that you've probably heard about in the news. That's where they're channeling all that money through, is through this infrastructure program. And their main allocations of that money was in fiscal year 23 and then upcoming in 24 when they're planning on dispersing the majority of that money. So definitely an opportune time for this program. Just kind of some of the general kind of project timelines of how the application process goes. There's an intent to apply, which is just kind of a one-page form that says, hey, we might be interested. Here's kind of a list of projects and the costs that we're looking at for those. And that was submitted. We worked with Mark and Heather back in November and got that preliminary form submitted. Didn't commit the city to anything. It more just kind of got you in the queue if you'd like to move forward with a full application. So for the clean water side, the funding applications are due on May 1st, 23, and the drinking water ones are due June 1st. So what will happen is communities will submit applications from across the state, and then they'll rank and score those applications, and they'll kind of distribute funding. They have an allocated amount of dollars to distribute, and then based on the scoring, they will distribute those funds accordingly. So as you can see, the interest rates for 2023 were amazing, 1.875, and I'd like to get a house loan for that. So they haven't released the rates for this year yet. We've been told that there may be a marginal increase, but it's not expected to be anything significant. So, excellent terms there. This is just kind of an overview of how we put together a project plan, is what it's called, is for the application of the project plan. And essentially we look at different alternatives to solve the need, and look at the environmental impacts of that, and we assemble that into a project plan report. And then we would do that in kind of this February, March timeframe. And then in April, we would give a public hearing, essentially just presenting the scope of the project and the project cost to the public as part of their funding requirements. And then the final submittal would be due May 1st. So submit that May 1st, and then compile those scores over the summer and release the scoring in the fall. The drinking water workflow is actually very similar now. They've kind of condensed this year and redid the format a little bit, so it follows a similar schedule but just a month behind. So they give themselves a little break there. Draft project plan would be April, the public hearing would be May, and then the application is due in June. So a little bit more time on that one. As I mentioned, the project plan is kind of the application document, if you will. So these are kind of some of just the main topics that are covered in that. It goes through an introduction and background of the community. So we look at everything from population projections to demographics to finances, environmental considerations, wetlands, and the needs of the project. So why are we doing this project? What's the scope of the project? We go through an alternatives analysis and look at different ways to solve the problem, and then come up with a recommended alternative that would be the project that they're going after, essentially. And then again, we talk on the environmental impacts. If there's any wetlands or endangered species that may be impacted, they look at all of that at this stage. And then the public hearing. So I won't dwell too long on this. There's a lot of information on the scoring for each one of these projects. I'm kind of just going to try to hit the high points on it. They redid the scoring this year and added a couple different categories. So this is for and there's different scoring for the clean water versus the drinking water. And we've got a whole team of staff that's very well versed in how this is scored, and we try to structure our reports to help scoring favorably there. But on the clean water side, compliance is number one. So that would be if there's any actions from the state that you must complete this improvement or there will be penalties. That would be one, which is not something that we would probably anticipate for the city. There's no outstanding enforcement actions or anything. Improving infrastructure is one that you guys probably would score pretty well in. The city has put together an asset management program. So that's planning for the future and promoting that resiliency and redundancy in the system. This last one here is a new one called affordability, where they look at your median household income in the community. And that is where they're actually providing a lot of the grant funding, is for overburdened and severely overburdened communities. We'll get into a little bit more later, but with the recent data that they just published for 2021, the city would actually, the preliminary scoring now is you qualify for significantly overburdened. So it's an excellent opportunity for some potential grant funding there. Another category here is public health. It's mainly focused on probably larger Detroit communities, sanitary sewer overflows, combined sewers, not something that typically impacts cities like Big Rapids. And then water quality. So any improvements to the treatment process that we can document. We can work closely with Dave and the plant there, and if there's anything there we could potentially score on, look into those points potentially. So 100 points total for the clean water side. Drinking water, Similar approach, they're looking at any facility upgrades to maintain compliance is a big one. Regionalization, if you can help serve other communities with your water upgrades, that's a big one. They like to see that. Or any source water protection if there's issues, if there were to be issues with the wells, not the case here. So probably not much on source water, but certainly facility upgrades to maintain compliance is definitely one to be looking at. Lead service line replacement. There are a couple of those highlighted in the drinking water system, so we get some points scored there. And some of these other ones are mainly related to violations. Again, no violations. So unfortunately, they're rewarding those that do not follow the rules in some of these instances. But the fact that you are still improving infrastructure and qualifying as a significantly overburdened does pose the city an opportunity here. So again, this is the similar scoring for the overburdened and significantly overburdened. This was kind of the scoring breakdown that is the state has pulled the 2021 data. So to be considered overburdened, the median household income must be below the state average of $63,000, and the MAHI for Big Rapids is actually $29,000 for the city on the latest data. Similarly, they look at taxable value, must be in the lowest 20% of Michigan's population, and for 24, that value is $22,920, and Big Rapids came in at under 19. So you meet the overburden criteria, and then actually looking at significantly overburdened of 125% of the annual household income to the poverty level was 37.5, and the city actually came in at 29. So you only have to meet one of these two criteria. So based on their guidance they've given so far, it looks as though the city would score in that significantly overburden range. And as we kind of saw last year, that was the one of the driving factors for grant dollars that were dispersed. So what kind of drove this whole, bringing this topic back up and looking at the SRF program or a larger funding application project? Obviously, that's taking on debt, which is, the city has done an excellent job of setting aside funds and paying cash out of pocket for infrastructure upgrades, which has been very successful in the past. What this table kind of highlights is, as infrastructure costs for projects have increased over the years, the feasibility of doing some of these upgrades on a cash basis is a challenge. So the column on the conceptual budget here on the right is the scope of the project as we kind of had it laid out of what might be included in a loan application. So these are kind of the wastewater facility, as an example, kind of that 1 to 10 year range of projects that we kind of see maybe coming up in the next 10 years. And you can see that total gets up to about $5.1 million. And over a 20-year loan at that low interest rate, you're looking at an annual payment principal interest of about $300,000. So you're able to kind of disperse that impact over 20 years, as opposed to the kind of typical cash flow scenario, where these costs, as we've seen year over year, kind of continue to go up, and some of these start to reach that $1 million range per year. So just another alternative way to help finance some larger infrastructure improvements, kind of tackle one big chunk at once here, while you're able to potentially get some of that qualified funding and potential grant dollars. Just as an example, there's obviously no guarantee for what may happen this year, but we saw 10, 20, 50, 80% grant on some of these projects for overburdened communities last year. So it is a huge opportunity. We've heard what once-in-a-generation funding packages that they're putting out for some of this stuff. So it's a great opportunity. It is a pretty condensed timeline, though, to get to some of these applications. Certainly still feasible at this point, but we have to work closely with for the city staff to get there. And that was kind of the main points I wanted to hit on. I know there's a lot of information to cover with this program, but we can certainly answer any questions or dive into more details if you'd like to hear.
Who are they?
They
They review all this and then they sit down and they decide who gets the money. Who are they? Are
They
they
would-
bureaucrats? Are they elected? Is it a committee? What is it? Who's the person reading the numbers and making the decision?
So the state of Michigan, Eagle, has their own department, the State Revolving Fund Department, where there's project managers that cover the entire state, and they meet as department heads and review it, as well as they review it with the technical permitting department on the needs of the project. So it's really all of Eagle. They look at it from the permitting side, the technical side, and the financial side.
Eagle being the Department of Environmental
But
Quality.
who oversees that? Who makes sure that those people are doing what's correct?
That'd be the state of Michigan. They go right to the governor, but that's kind of how it goes up too.
Okay, thanks. So we'll get a lot of those grants. Are they busy?
I think one thing too that Scott didn't mention was submitting the application. He talked about the project plans. There is some cost involved upfront to prepare those project plans. And so a typical project plan on the clean water or the drinking water side might be $35,000 each for doing the engineering studies and reports to prepare that plan. We're looking at combining, if you're to go after both funding sources into one, do both of them, but there's economy of scale there, so it would be less than that. So there is a risk that you run the engineering report and you get some results back at the end of the day that you're not going to get as much grant as you hope. It's going to be more loan dollars. You're not committed at that point other than you're out some of the upfront costs to prepare that plan. Those plans are good for 5 years, so if you decided down the road you wanted to reapply, you still have the plan in the hopper, so to speak. So I think that's where we're at right now, is with the timelines and things. Our next step would be to bring in a proposal if there's interest at the commission level or city level to your next commission meeting, so that we can get going, and we're going to have to fast track the plans to make sure we get those funding.
So that's the whole industry in the engineering firms is they learn how to manipulate the government systems and programs. Otherwise, we wouldn't know how, and it wouldn't get done, and we wouldn't be able to engineer it. Is that correct?
I don't know if I like the manipulation term. You know, we're looking at the scoring criteria, and we're trying to package the best scoring project for the city to maximize the available points. I mean, it's a competitive program, so you have to come to the table with a project. I think the fact that the community is significantly overburdened weighs heavily into the scoring of grant assistance. And there's times that we've done the engineering report and it's 100% loan. There's no grant handed out whatsoever. But we think that with that overburden status, we may be in line for something. I can't promise it, and the scorings all change this go around. It's just this last two go arounds, they've had that influx of infrastructure money that there's been more grant dollars available than we're used to.
Thanks. Mark, anything?
Mayor, we have tried to avoid this for a long time, frankly. Our goal as a staff, Dave, Steve, Heather, and I, and all the other folks who work at the water and sewer plants, and certainly Carl in the treasurer's office, have always been the idea of trying to move towards being debt-free within our enterprise fund of water and sewer. And we have been that way in water for some time, I would say 8 to 10 years. But inflation is eating our lunch, so to speak. At one time, we could keep up at wastewater, and we're not feeling like we can do that. Is what these projects are getting outside the scope. Is that the one that talks about So, sorry, Scott. So in replacing all the aeration blowers that are needed, we keep having problems with, and 1.2 million, if we wait, is 1.7. Could be higher. I don't know.
In 10 years?
That's our motivation as staff in bringing this towards you is, obviously trying to go after the grant funds that are available. I mean, I don't know if we'd be doing this otherwise, but we used to be able to cash flow improvements, and we're finding that less and less feasible.
Right, we're using rates on the sewer and water. That's how you did it.
Right, yeah.
Rates, they had to pay for themselves.
Ratepayers pay these fees, exactly. Yep. There's no general fund tax dollars that go into either one of these systems. These are on the backs of the folks who pay the rates. We have a outstanding loan in the wastewater system that I think is paid off in 2030. I think we did it in 2010, 29,
yeah,
maybe
20 years. Right.
Maybe 2029, but that would be a big change in terms of whether or not the rates would have to go up. But the water system is in a certainly a place to be able to accommodate that. There is none. Wastewater not so much, but we can't keep up on the improvements, and there's the wastewater environment is such that it demands more improvements. It's a toxic environment, so to speak. Not toxic, not the right word, but it's harder on equipment. Right. So it's a kind of a twofold operation that I think you're going to see a recommendation from staff, Mayor, is we feel like this is a good way to go. But there is risk, as Todd pointed out.
It'd be nice to have a grant money.
It would be fantastic. Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, is the design work that you would be doing to package this together. At some point, we would need that design work anyway, correct? So we're not.
It's not design work.
Okay.
It's study work. So what we're going to look at is the different options. We have to evaluate different alternatives. So while we may want to look at replacing the screw pump, we need to look at, well, what else could we do? We have this option. If we don't replace the screw pump, what are the impacts? So we have to look at all those impacts, give them the report, and document what that scope of project's going to be.
Gotcha.
Now, that being said, some of that work will apply to the design, but it's not the hardcore preparing project plans.
Gotcha.
So,
Mayor, you may remember, other commissioners as well, that we just paid cash to replace I never remember, it must be west, this was east, the west screw pump. And remind me, Scott, what did we pay there?
Just under 400,000.
Right, and now we're at 5. It's just, we're having a hard time keeping up on that.
I mentioned too, we have some upfront costs that may be at risk if you decide to not go with the project, but if you were to accept financing and grant, if that were to come about, then the engineering costs for the design roll into that package. So you wouldn't have to come up with additional city funds outside of the grant or loan.
The big decision, Mayor.
But the project preparation plan's not part of that. We have to pay cash for that. It doesn't include it in the grant. Questions? Anybody before they head out? Thank you. Public comment not related to items on the agenda. Anyone from the public have anything to bring us today? Seeing none, we'll move next. We have no public hearing today. General business, we're going to talk about a resolution approving the fee schedule for the airport services at Ruben Hood Airport. Steve's not here, so are you going to take that?
I'll tackle this. We have Jeff Bittenbender and Beth are here from the airport, so they are experts, and I think Jeff put together the background of this report, so we may need you here. As was stated earlier, we have a slightly modified version. Ed Puccio and his wife are here as well, who operate out of the airport, have a land lease, and just wanted to be sure on the fee schedule that current leaseholders, land leaseholders, rates wouldn't change until sometime in the future if they sold or so on. So that's the change you see. Our fees at the airport have remained unchanged for many years. And so the advisory committee took this issue on, had in-depth discussion about fees, how they're structured here, how they compare to other airports, and that is the basis for what you have in front of you in terms of a recommendation from the advisory board to increase fees in a variety of ways. So that's what I have for you, Mayor. This is coming straight from airport staff and the advisory committee. I think this is the best way to go.
Speak comments. Anything from you folks from the airport?
It looks great.
Any comment?
The only question I have has to do with paragraph 2 that you have, that was written by Steve Schroeder, and it says that ask the committee to do an independent review, and I just want to know if the fee structure is the independent review done by airport personnel.
That's what he's referring to, yes.
So is that independent?
Yes, that's what he's referring to. I understand what you're saying, that we didn't hire somebody up to look at fees from a different perspective. We were trying to not refer any costs. So yeah, what he's referring to is what you have here. We don't have anything else that backs it up.
The only other thing that I would mention, if I may, and that is we're dealing here with an issue of credits and debits, but we're only dealing with half of it. It looks like the research or the work that was done on a limited amount of airports, which is fine. That works for me. The other thing is, though, it doesn't include a self-look at the airport itself. For example, the work that was done is kind of knocking on the door of benchmarking and best practices. What we don't see is how the other airports are staffed at the same level. Do we have, in fact, the right staff? Do we have too much? Do we have too little? Are they contracted? Are they done by the city? And that put together in a little bit more digestible fashion, the way this is assembled, if you look at it, there are blocks each airport has. You can't go across, you can't figure it out unless you go ahead and pull it apart. The only thing I would suggest for the future, I'm not debating this, but I think I want to put a little pin in this, that we have an independent assessment of that which the city is paying to go ahead and run the airport, which includes all the critical benchmarking and best practices of more airports in the area. I think that would be wise to either verify that we're doing the right thing or to make some adjustments there, and especially if we're on the cusp of having an expansion. And I'm just saying that from a business standpoint.
Is there a small airport group association that would have all those numbers easily reachable, or don't they have such a thing?
No.
There's such a thing.
There is the state has an airport arrangement. Okay, again, it's Steve here, and I only got this late, so I'm winging it here. Okay. But the fact is, one could go ahead and have an independent person do this, as opposed to what we have here. But I think it needs to be explored. I wish Steve were here to go ahead and address that. I think it's something that we need to put on a list and maybe have somebody, independent of the whole operation, take a look at the entirety aspect of it. Again, as you're on the cusp of going ahead and doing some pretty big things that are going to require not just multiplying that which you have, but going ahead and really looking at it from a zero-based standpoint, seeing if it's really what you need. End of the discussion.
Right. You got that. I'm happy to follow up there. Thank you. Anybody else airport information? Is there a motion to approve the new fee schedule for the Robin Hood Airport?
So moved. Approved.
There's a motion and support. Further questions about the fee schedule? There's the new one is they gave us was slightly different. And as a lay person, unknowing a thing about airports, I would have no clue if those numbers are right, wrong, or different. We have to rely on our staff. All right. Tammy, did you call the question?
Packard?
Yes.
Epley,
Yes.
Stumper,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we're gonna talk about the addendum that, Mr. Fowler put on the contract that we signed with, Joe McNally's company to give us that 30-day window, so there's time for people to get their bids in on all property the city owns. There are questions about that. I think we talked about it for many businesses, and we get, finally trying to get equipment to get, questions?
Mr. McNally already signed the addendum as well.
Oh, okay, good. Is there a resolution, accepting that first addendum to the real estate contract?
So moved.
Support.
There's a motion, support, further questions? Jamie?
Epley,
Yes.
Stumper,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Next, we're gonna move, motion carries. Next, we're going to move to public works session, Heather's section. And we're talking about morning and evening swim lessons.
I'll tackle it, Mayor. Others may jump in. So, my kids who are 23 and 21 both took swimming lessons at our pool, and there was clamoring about evening swimming lessons when they were there. So that's, 15 plus years ago. So this has been something we have been challenged with for many years, and staff has come up with a way to offer them. And so I think the kudos to Heather and Josh. Now Josh should announce as well, right on time. Josh is started as a lifeguard at the pool, has worked there when he was in high school, after high school, is currently the person who does the training for our lifeguards. And so he's very experienced at the pool, and in fact is going to be the pool manager for us this year. We've struggled with that, and so I'm excited about Josh. So he knows all about how you read this fee schedule, Mr. Mayor. The airport one's a little confusing. This one I always find a challenge too. But anyway, you will see on the back page of it that there's 3 day a week, and it will be offered in the evening for people who can accommodate their schedule to be there. Really, it's always been in the mornings down at the pool for swim lessons. We're venturing out into something new. So we're excited about that and happy to bring it to you, but we're all here to answer questions.
Other questions? Josh, was there quite a big number who wanted to go at night?
Over the number of years there have been, this last year there was a larger push because Ferris is no longer offering swimming lessons, and they've always done theirs in the evenings, so that's where the bigger pushes come from now.
Great. Congratulations on adding another position to your job.
Thank you.
Other questions regarding evening swim? These are the sorts of things that probably could be handled at a level.
Mayor, that's a good point, and Brad and I briefly touched on this with Tammy earlier. The way our charter, our code, our policy, something dictates that all fees are set by the city commission. So that's why these types of things end up at your desk, because it's a fee attached to it. But if that's changeable, well, I guess we'll look into it, right, Brad?
That's right, we can look into changing that.
Yeah.
Is there a motion for the resolution having night swimming lessons?
Support.
Questions? Tammy?
Johnson,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Cochran,
Yes.
Epley,
Yes.
Stumper.
Yes. Now, next is a bigger resolution that's important to the health of our community, is the resolution accepting water service line replacement.
I'm very excited to be bringing this to you this evening. This, I think you would find that we are many, many years ahead of almost every community across the state. I would venture to guess that. The state mandates this project happening, but there is a timeline that, Steve, help me, goes out to 2030 or 2035 to when it has to be done.
The program actually starts in 2025, and you have to do 5% a year over 20 years. So it's in the 45.
45.
And right now, we're on projection to have it all completed before the 2025 year. I mean, we're looking at
Yeah,
the
so
rest
this
of them
is
being done.
just a credit to our staff's abilities to pull this off. So it's really exciting to bring it to you. It doesn't mean it's the very last time we'd ever be challenged by maybe a line that needs to be replaced. But this is all due diligence to find every line that we can find that falls into the parameters that the state dictates. So we did all that investigation last year. People went around and cored holes in front of people's homes, and you probably got asked about it, Mayor, about what's that about. Well, that was this investigation. So we did all the investigation. We came back, developed a project list, 143 service lines, went out to bid. You see the bids here. Lucky to have Gerber Construction, who we've worked on this work before, as our low bidder, $670,960. You'll see a vast range in bids, frankly, almost double to our high bid. But we are confident in Gerber and in their abilities to do this work, and we just really think this is the best step forward for the city.
There must be grant money for lead lines.
Well, you saw it on his list. That's what would be the way to get it. They are funneling all water and sewer grant funding through those programs.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And we have many other programs that fit into those, or many other projects, I should say. So, and we will find other services as we progress throughout our work through the city and changing meters and so on. But this does a vast majority and protects the citizens we have. We're doing everything we can to get them the quality water they deserve by doing this project now. Questions?
What was the budget?
Heather?
We
low.
have-
It was less than this, but it's
Currently in this fiscal year, we have approximately $225,000, and then we're planning in a capital improvement project to fund the remaining portion, which would be $440,000.
so this will cross budget years, but the water fund is capable of taking on this kind of project, much more than any others, because of, again, we talked about the lack of debt on the system.
So it's from the 1 year previous this, or have we been saving up for it over a couple of years?
Well, we had money that was available from previous to last 2 fiscal years when we started this project, and so we didn't use all that money, so we did some carry forward. And so with the funding that we're going to have presented to you at the next commission meeting with the capital improvement project, the remaining balance would be applicable to the bid.
Commissioner, I believe that when we projected what this was going to be, it was about $550 to $575.
I would think it's staff priority.
Yeah.
For this one, I'd like to see somebody vote no on replacing lead lines.
Well,
It's a real good idea.
Just for clarification, this is to correct the ones we had knowledge of anyway, right?
Yeah.
So what we have knowledge of now, we have knowledge now. We're asking to take action, and it may be a little bit above what we originally projected, but that's what
Sure.
we know about these. We want to take care of them.
That's all true.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, how many did you check in? All last year they were digging holes. Did they hit everybody?
4.
Were we close to?
Well, here's how it was done, Mayor. You've probably seen a very convoluted map in your time. It's not in your package. I'm guessing maybe in previous ones you've had it where it's a map of the city and it has some things in purple and it's sort of confusing, right? And what that highlights, so there was a period in time of when water lines were installed that the city changed their policy of how they were installed. I want to say that was the 50s.
Yeah.
And so the map that was the basis for what we investigated was the pre-1950s, because that's when they did these lead service lines. And so that's what was investigated. And I think it was 400 or 500 that were looked at.
That number sounds so accurate.
And they came up with 143 that needed replaced.
How long is it expected to take to replace all 143 lines?
They're allowed to begin no sooner than, I believe, April 15th, and they are mandated to stay in the city and get the work completed, but they can be done no later than November 15th.
So this season?
Pretty much.
Are any disruptions to services required?
The homeowners will receive a letter from my department notifying them that who the contractor is and tentatively when we'll plan on having the work take place. Last year we didn't do any of these service line replacements. It was the year prior, and Gerber was our contractor. So what we'll do is have a pre-con meeting, and they will be the ones that give them notification as to what they have scheduled. So that way the homeowner has contractors' direct contact information, and then we will send the letter prior to that one.
Okay.
And Lily will be sure to put it in all her things.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah, yes, it does help.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a motion for the resolution for water line replacement?
Support.
There's a motion and support. Further questions? Jamie?
Kevin?
Yes.
Paxton?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Steve, is it true that in the next new code book, galvanized piping is going to be illegal?
No. Galvanized is not the problem. The problem is how they used to potentially used to hook galvanized pipe to the main. There was a section called a lead gooseneck, and because galvanized is porous, they're afraid that lead got entrapped in the pores of the galvanized, so that's why we removed galvanized, because it may have been at one time hooked to the service main, or the main with a lead component. So that's why we pulled it out.
So what if we can do with all those galvanized pipes that go from the bottom of a well to a house?
Well, again, if there's no lead in the system, then galvanized is fine.
They said galvanized is not safe till the galvanizer comes off.
I haven't heard anything on that, man.
I don't know. But they were complaining that all the new wells are going to have to be plastic, can't be galvanized fine.
I have not heard that yet.
Next, we go to information technology. Did we vote on? Yeah, we did. Uninterruptible power supply. What do we know about that?
Oh, what do you want?
What is
22 years ago, I think, whenever public safety was built, we had this installed. And it is a rack of batteries that pretty much provide clean power and kind of make sure that nothing burns up, lightning strikes, etc. We've been nursing it for about 10 years. We've been telling it constantly it needs to be replaced, but it's not just a couple $100. It's a lot of money. Budgeted $40,000 for it. Luckily, it came in at 37, so we're pretty happy with that. It runs the entire building instead of just a few things. It runs air conditioning. It runs lights, everything. So pretty much, I can tell you that if we don't replace it, it's going to be a little dark down there.
Anything, Mark? I go. Any questions? Is there a motion for a resolution awarding the bid for the uninterruptible power supply, UPF?
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Further questions?
Paxton?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
That's our favorite topic. We actually saw things today, Mark. I will commend you on that.
Well, I didn't do it much to make it happen, Mayor, but I'll take it. They were working in here earlier today. I'm sure Tim had a role in that too.
We're talking about a resolution awarding the bid for audiovisual for this room.
So,
But only one bid, one person.
one bid, one person. We had a second bidder that actually was going to bid and then canceled at the last moment. Just couldn't fit into the schedule.
We've dealt with this company before. I've worked with them close to 30 years. They work a lot in town. They're out of Grand Rapids, but this is what they do for a living. And then they basically expanded into networking afterwards. We brought them in and told them what we like, what we don't like, etc. Some of the features are going to be longer microphones for you. They're going to be 23-inch goosenecks, so you're not going to have to lean forward. It will actually pick up very quiet versus also very loud and adjust automatically in the software. You're going to have speakers above you. We're going to have speakers back here. There's also going to be a microphone rack back here. When you speak, we hear. When the audience speaks, you hear. There's no interference as far as the ringing and so on and so forth. So when somebody stands up, they're not going to have a microphone to be able to talk to you. It's actually going to be there's going to be a camera system in there. The camera system is going to be focused with software to be able to know who is speaking up there, and it will focus on you. It's not only gives us the ability to record it, but we're also going to try to go and stream live without any type of interruption. So right, as you noticed in the past when we had the Zoom meetings and the fun joy of those couple of years, this is kind of going to be a little bit better where we're not going to have those interruptions. So it will be able to stream to whatever we want to stream out there and also record for future use if we need to. One of the big problems that we've had is too many fingers in too many places. All the equipment's going to be gone. Everything is going to be in our locked area. Everything is going to revolve directly in the back. There's going to be a panel that's on the wall. It's literally green, yellow, red. Green means good, red means bad. It will be, it will have the capability of remote access. We can fix it.
Somebody will be able to be on call to watch the meeting.
So all that.
Do you have some more better security so we don't get what we got that one day?
So the Zoom, you're not going to see the Zoom portion of it. The Zoom portion is for other people. And it doesn't have to be a Zoom. It could be, Teams or whatever. It's going to be a view only. They're going to be able to view the meeting live and not interrupt you and have all the little fun quirks that we've had in the past.
Okay.
So we're not going to have to worry about that. We have the ability to conference in phones if we need to in the system also. The video that's on the screen will actually mingle into the audio and video recording that is out there in broadcast. So when somebody's able to see you also, but they're also going to be able to see whatever's on the screen like they were here. So that's the functions of it. It's pricey, as you can see. Things keep on going up. We had to work a little bit on this because of the shipping times and lead times. So we had to change some equipment around in order to be able to get it done within the next 6 months. We had very, very long shipping times, from 6 to 8 months sometimes. So they're a little bit better, I've been told now. And it's the latest technology that's out there. So we've done this, before in the past, and we're doing it again, hopefully. All right. Questions? Is there a motion for a resolution awarding bids for audiovisual for this commission room?
So moved.
Support. There's a motion and support. Further questions? Tammy?
Epstein?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
The next item is interesting because it's one of the things I mentioned all of us get quizzed about by the general public. Why do I send my tax bill to Eaton Rapids? Well, it's all coming back to Big Rapids.
We're changing it, exactly, Mayor. That's part of what you see here. And to sort of start from the beginning, there is one software provider for all income tax communities, 20 plus income tax communities in the state of Michigan. There's only one. We all use the same software. That company that provides that software, the decision years ago was to contract with them to also do processing. We need their software. We're buying it back, so to speak. But we're also bringing back in-house the work to do the processing of returns. We hired extra staff in the income tax office. Mercedes works in there now with Paula Weaver. And I think there's a better customer service. That's what you're hearing. Other commissioners have heard is, I sent my check and didn't get cashed. Or why does it go to Eaton Rapids? None of that made sense to people. And I think this will help. So we need a relationship with Innovative. That's what you see in these variety of agreements. We kind of be tied to them through software. that we need to be able to do the processing, but the work is gonna be done, inside City Hall. We're bringing that back, so to speak. That's what we have for you this evening.
It's a huge mess of contracts, Brad. Did you ready to do all these? Look at these.
I've looked at
There's
them.
one after another, not just one simple contract.
Yeah, that's,
Worrisome, anytime that happens, it's worrisome.
right. So this innovative, structured this with, 3 different agreements here. There's a user license agreement, a maintenance agreement, and then there's one other end user. I understand it feels convoluted. This is what, Innovative is asking from us to be able to move forward with the changes we want to make.
Did you look at it, Tim, at all?
Oh, yeah. So I was around when the company used to be called Cortland Software, and we originally had a mainframe, and we just got right outside of the room almost, and we moved to EC. Innovative for the time. Cortland was the only one that had it. We used them for ever since I've been here. And then this last time, as Mark was saying, that switched over to do all processing and everything else. The problem is that they consider us losing our license when we did that, and that's why you see this huge cost coming back in. He also knows that we can't do anything about it. He's it. I mean, I've asked our BSA company, would you please write something, and nothing. So everybody is kind of in the same boat that hasn't exactly on there. So we moved everything. We're planning on moving everything back in-house. We bought the equipment and hardware for it. Unfortunately, I wish I could tell you there was another option. That's great.
And it doesn't take long to pay that reinvestment.
This is true. We've been paying right in the ballpark of about $80,000 a year for their services. We have an upfront cost to purchase the software. I think it was $44, and then a annual $87.50. I think it is. So yeah, we're gonna, after year 1, we're gonna go from 80,000 to 8,700 in terms of savings and the cost to Innovative. I think that's gonna. I think it's a good move. Again, we have another staff person, so maybe it's not quite a wash, but the customer service, I'm convinced, will be better having our staff handle folks that need questions or need services.
It's also going to be a little bit easier to be able to implement the acceptance of credit card. Because that has been something that has a lot of people have requested, and right now it is convoluted. Not going to be able to happen, but with us hosting it, you should be able to go ahead.
Will be this year's return, Mark, or 23's return, or 22's return?
Yeah, our contract as it existed expired at the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Is there a motion for accepting the proposal from Innovative Software?
So,
Support.
There's a motion and support. Are there further questions?
I have one.
Yes.
So does that, will we get to start in e-file, or is that not even related?
No, that's a good one, and Tim's brought up credit cards, which was another good one. We are working to have e-file capabilities, and I would expect 2024, Tim.
I'd say 2024. The big problem is when it was posted over there, he's coming out with his own e-file, and there's third parties that allow you to do this. It's a lot easier if we have it in-house, and then we can work with the third party versus trying to work at his place. So that's the intent, is to have e-file.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Tammy?
Grantham?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Packman?
Yes.
Epley?
yes.
Dumpster?
Yes.
The last two resolutions are to add members to the Planning Commission and the
Assessment Board
of Review. Any questions about those folks? They were in the packet.
I don't have anything to add. Just
Mark,
glad
did
to
you-
have good folks.
But it's not here. Could you throw the two names out?
Yeah, I'm
Somebody in the
sorry.
audience wants to hear about it.
I'm happy to do that. Stephanie Emig would be appointed to a full term ending January 25 on the Assessment Board of Review, and Tim Vogel, full term that goes until May of 2026 on the Planning
Anybody have a question? And there are more, I think 2 more maybe spots on planning commission that have a little attrition. So keep thinking. Tammy, for the resolution for appointing those 2 folks. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion support. Tammy?
Simmons?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Stetser?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Thank those people, Mark, for
Will,
good.
yes, absolutely.
Jim will stop by the house when he walks by. Unscheduled business, the only thing I want, does somebody have any unscheduled business besides? It's gonna end with a good note. Maybe the commissioner of the city doesn't know that St. Mary's Church is having their 150th year, which is kind of a big year because they started 4 years after the city started. So I imagine they were here working before they got there, whatever the church gives. And they had quite a ceremony. They asked me just to say hi. The bishop, it was a big deal, and there were, I would guess, nearly 1,000 people in the church. It was huge, which was something we in the city should probably honor them with, and I even think maybe we should think of something to do to bring them on their 150 years, so maybe yeah, because they're going to do some different activities all year where they need police help with marches from St. Paul to St. Mary's and that kind of thing, and really it was quite an impressive bunch of work they've done to get their celebration all year will be celebrated. So we in the city should pay attention to that. Other business? For the good of the group? Ms. Jennings? All right. Anyone? We're adjourned.